Welcome to the Deep Dive. We plunge headfirst into the ideas shaping our world, really trying to give you that shortcut to being genuinely well-informed. And today we're diving into, well, a really critical exploration of a concept that's captivated so many business leaders, is this idea of escaping that brutal competition we see everywhere and, discovering untapped market potential instead. Just think about that typical business landscape. It's called a red ocean, right? Like this bloody battleground. Companies just fighting tooth and nail. They're carving up existing demand, which, let's face it, is often shrinking. Always benchmarking competitors, trying to get an edge.
It's relentless, and it often kills profits, kills real innovation. It just sounds exhausting.
It is exhausting. Just this constant fight for survival. Every little win feels hard-won, fragile. But what if? What if there was another way?
Yeah.
A path to clear, uncontested market space. Somewhere you could define the rules because, well, there aren't any competitors yet. Have you ever dreamt of that? That's pretty much the incredible allure, isn't it, of W. Chan Kim and Renée Mauborgne's Blue Ocean Strategy. Yeah, huge book. Became this global phenomenon.
Oh, absolutely. It sold millions, translated everywhere. It obviously struck a deep chord.
Challenging the old ways of thinking, inspiring people to imagine something different.
And that's really our mission today in this deep dive. We definitely need to acknowledge the book's power. It's genuinely inspiring in how it calls for moving beyond just competition.
Right. It's a strong challenge to that whole business is war idea.
Exactly. And it does offer some really useful analytical tools, like this strategy canvas, which we'll definitely talk about. It helps you visualize things.
For sure. Variable stuff there.
But, and here's the core of our critique today. We also have to critically analyze the central claim. Is creating new market space truly as, systematic, as repeatable, and crucially, as risk-free as the book sometimes makes it sound?
That's the key, isn't it? The risk-free part always raises an eyebrow for me.
Precisely. So we'll be questioning whether many of its famous examples, Cirque du Soleil often comes up. Did they really happen because someone followed a step-by-step process, or were they maybe more like these unique, unrepeatable creative breakthroughs?
Like lightning in a bottle. Hard to replicate.
Exactly. And very importantly, we need to really examine the immense risks, the inherent uncertainties involved when you're trying to build a market that just doesn't exist yet.
Okay, so it's about appreciating the vision.
But tempering the expectation with a healthy dose of reality. That's the plan.
The allure of the blue ocean. What makes it compelling?
Okay, so let's start with that allure. Let's unpack why Blue Ocean's strategy became so incredibly attractive. It really kicks off by challenging that red ocean mindset we mentioned. Kim and Mauborgne paint this stark picture, don't they? Bloody competition. Companies stuck just dividing up existing and often shrinking demand and benchmarking competitors. It's not just tiring to read about. It's the reality for so many businesses. They try to stand out, but
they often end up looking more and more alike, right? Competing on the same features, same price points.
It becomes a race to the bottom, basically.
Yeah, and what's so appealing, I think, is how Blue Ocean Strategy just flips that completely.
Right.
Instead of fighting over that existing, maybe shrinking pie, it says, go grow demand. Break away from the competition.
Bake a whole new pie.
Exactly. Create a new market space where the rules haven't even been written yet. It totally reframes the whole idea of competition. Think about classic strategy like Sun Tzu's Art of War. It teaches you how to fight smarter within the existing battle. Blue Ocean Strategy says, why fight on that battlefield at all? Go create a new one.
That's a radical shift.
It really is. It suggests the best way to win might be to not play the same game. It feels liberating, doesn't it? Moving beyond just win-lose.
That shift is definitely powerful. So, okay, if we're not fighting in the red ocean, how do we actually make this leap? How do we get to these blue markets? The book talks a lot about value innovation. Can you walk us through what that really means, not just for the customer, but for the company too?
Absolutely. Value innovation is the engine here. It's about creating a significant jump, a leap in value for both the buyers and the company doing the creating. Kim and Mauborgne break it down into three key things that have to work together. First, there's exceptional utility. This isn't just tweaking something slightly. It means offering something genuinely new and compelling, something that maybe solves a big problem differently or even creates a need people didn't realize they had. It's got to be a leap.
Okay, so something truly different and better.
Second is strategic pricing. This is super important for getting mass adoption. You could have the most amazing innovation, but if nobody can afford it, you haven't created a blue ocean, just maybe a niche.
Right. Needs to be accessible.
Exactly. Strategic pricing aims to make it easily accessible to the mass of target buyers. Finding that price point that invites people in, rather than keeping them out. It requires really understanding what the mass market values. And the third piece is target costing. This is critical for the company itself, for its survival and profit. You need to be able to actually produce this amazing strategically priced thing at a cost that still leaves you a healthy profit margin.
Ah, the practical bit.
The very practical bit. The book is clear. Cost shouldn't just dictate the price, and you shouldn't have to sacrifice that exceptional utility just because production is expensive initially. If you can't hit the target cost needed for your strategic price and profit, well, you either need to innovate your business model to get the costs down, or maybe that idea just isn't viable as a blue ocean move.
That sounds like a really tough balancing act.
It is. Delivering exceptional utility, making it affordable, and producing it profitably, it's incredibly challenging. But when you get those three utility, price, cost aligned and integrated, that's value innovation. You create value for the buyer and profit for the company. It's about pursuing differentiation and low cost simultaneously, not trading one off against the other.
It sounds like this beautiful, complex dance where everything has to click. And the book really presents this not just as wouldn't it be nice if, but as a repeatable process. It even claims these tools let companies create blue oceans in a risk-minimizing and opportunity-maximizing manner. That promise, minimize risk, maximize opportunity, that's got to be a huge part of why it's so popular, right? Who wouldn't want that?
Oh, absolutely. That's a massive selling point. It gives the whole framework this aura of control and predictability. And it's not just abstract ideas. They provide practical tools to help guide companies.
Right, like the strategy canvas. That seems pretty central to the whole framework. For anyone listening who hasn't encountered it, can you explain how it helps companies break out of old patterns?
Yeah, the strategy canvas is a really clever visual tool. Its strength is its simplicity, but it can spark some deep thinking. Its main job is to help companies systematically rethink market boundaries, not just comparing yourself to your direct competitors, but looking across industries, across different strategic groups, maybe even different buyer groups you hadn't considered.
So it broadens the perspective.
Exactly. Instead of just plotting how you stack up on the usual factors, price, features, whatever, it forces you to map out all the factors an industry currently competes on. Then comes the crucial part, asking 4 key questions about those factors. Which ones, that everyone takes for granted, should be eliminated entirely? Which should be reduced way below the industry standard, maybe they're overserving customers? Which should be raised way above the standard, offering unprecedented value? And, most importantly, which factors should be created that the industry has never even offered before?
Ah, so it's about subtraction and addition, not just doing more of the same.
Precisely. The real magic isn't just the finished chart. It's the strategic conversation it triggers. It forces teams to challenge those deep-seated assumptions about what customers really value versus what the industry thinks they value. It's about finding a fundamentally different value curve. A common mistake, for instance, is companies get excited about raising and creating, but they forget to eliminate and reduce. That just adds cost without necessarily creating a true blue ocean.
So it's a catalyst for thinking differently about the market, and it goes beyond just external strategy, right?
Yeah.
They apply similar thinking internally. I remember reading about leadership campuses and leadership profiles in blue ocean leadership. How do those work?
That's right. They apply the same core logic, eliminate, reduce, raise, create, to leadership activities within an organization.
Yeah.
The goal is leadership. That's, as they put it, inspiring, fair, high-performing, but also low cost to the organization in terms of wasted time and effort.
Okay, so making leadership itself more effective and less burdensome.
Exactly. These tools help leaders identify activities that just don't add value. Think time-sucking meetings with no clear outcomes, or maybe bureaucratic hurdles that kill initiative. Those get targeted for elimination or reduction. And conversely, it helps leaders focus on or create new activities that do add real value, both for their team's engagement and for the company's bigger strategic goals.
Like maybe spending less time on admin and more time coaching.
That's a classic example. A leader might realize through this process they're bogged down in tasks that could be delegated or eliminated, reduce, freeing up time for high-impact coaching or mentoring. Create. It's designed to foster significant internal change and get everyone aligned, especially during a big strategic shift like aiming for a blue ocean. It helps people feel like they're in the same boat moving together. They suggest using aggregated as-is canvases where employees anonymously rate current leadership behaviors. That data makes the need for change pretty clear and less personal.
Takes the defensiveness down a notch.
Hopefully. Then, teams develop 2B profiles for ideal leadership. Discussing these at an aggregate level first makes individual leaders more open, theoretically. They even suggest having direct reports give feedback on how well their managers are making the shift, using concrete examples. So it's a whole system aimed at transforming leadership from the inside out, aligning it with the blue ocean ambition.
Navigating the unknown, the realities and risks of blue oceans.
Okay, this is where things get, well, maybe a bit more complicated. The pull of the blue ocean is strong, but now let's dive into those less discussed realities, the critiques. A big part of the promise, as we said, is this idea of a systematic strategic process. But can creating truly new, uncontested markets really be boiled down to a formula, a step-by-step guide? Or are those big successes like Cirque du Soleil, maybe more like, I don't know, unique creative flashes, things that just can't be easily replicated?
This hits on a really fundamental question about innovation and predictability. It's something Clayton Christensen explored brilliantly in The Innovator's Dilemma. He pointed out that while experts are often pretty good at forecasting markets for sustaining technologies, improvements on existing stuff, they have enormous difficulty spotting the advent and predicting the size of new markets for disruptive innovations.
Because there's no history, no data to go on?
Exactly. For these totally new markets, neither revenues nor costs can be known with any real certainty. So trying to manage them with detailed plans and budgets, which you can't even formulate accurately, well, Christensen says that's just inappropriate. It doesn't work. This really challenges that idea of a neat, systematic, risk-minimizing process for true blue oceans, because the very nature of the target is unknown. It's like mapping fog. And let's look at a concrete example, Intel's microprocessor. This wasn't born from some grand strategic plan to create a new market. Intel actually developed the first one, the 4004, under contract for a Japanese calculator company, Busicom.
Right, it was a custom job initially.
Totally. And then it was Intel's own engineers who had to persuade management to buy back the patent rights. And here's the kicker. Intel had no explicit strategy for building a market for this new microprocessor. The company simply sold the chip to whoever seemed to be able to use it.
Wow. So they just put it out there and saw what happened.
Pretty much. It was an organic, almost accidental discovery of a massive blue ocean. The market emerged bit by bit through opportunistic selling and people finding clever uses for it, not through some pre-planned value innovation framework.
That Intel story really throws a wrench in the systematic process idea, doesn't it? If a technology that literally changed the world emerged like that, without a clear strategy or even a defined market in mind, then how much credit can we really give to a predefined blueprint for creating these new markets? It sounds much more like discovery, adaptation, maybe luck.
Exactly. More like feeling your way in the dark than following a map. And Eric Ries, in The Lean Startup, echoes this, especially for new ventures. He says a startup's initial plans are almost always hunch or intuition guided. There just isn't enough data to make an informed guess about the financial model when you're doing something brand new.
So you have to learn as you go.
Precisely. Success often demands that entrepreneurs get out of the building, talk to potential customers, test assumptions relentlessly, and pivot based on what they learn. Iterate, iterate, iterate. That whole approach is fundamentally different from the idea of a fully planned, risk-minimizing, systematic process that Blue Ocean's strategy seems to imply you can follow from the outset. It's about learning under conditions of extreme uncertainty.
Okay, so the systematic part is questionable. Let's talk about the risk-minimizing claim. That's a big draw. But realistically, trying to create a market that literally doesn't exist yet, that sounds inherently risky, doesn't it? You're sailing into totally uncharted territory.
You've nailed it. It is inherently risky. It's venturing into the unknown. Interestingly, Kim and Mauborgne themselves, in a later piece called Red Ocean Traps, talk about assumptions that keep managers stuck in red oceans. Now, they frame these as reasons companies avoid blue oceans, but these traps implicitly highlight the very real risks involved.
Like what kind of traps?
Well, one big one is betting heavily on technology innovation without a clear path to profitability. Getting excited about cool tech, but not having figured out how it actually makes money or solves a real customer problem at scale. Another is just assuming creative destruction will happen easily without grasping the massive, costly effort of actual market building that's usually required. These traps show that the perceived risks aren't just paranoia. They reflect the harsh realities of trying to conjure something from nothing. And think about the sheer level of speculation that can happen in unproven markets. Remember the dot-com bubble. Burton Malkiel, in A Random Walk Down Wall Street, tells the story of the Globe.com's IPO in 1998. This company was basically an online message board. It had neither actual revenues nor profits. Zero. And yet,
And yet its stock price exploded on day one, going from $9 to $97, a market cap of nearly $1 billion for a company with no revenue.
that's madness.
It perfectly illustrates that period when investors would throw money at businesses that only 5 years before would not have passed normal due diligence hurdles. That's not risk minimizing, it's pure speculative frenzy in a new, undefined space, a stark reminder of the volatility. And if you look at the bigger economic picture, Carlota Perez, in Finance and Technical Change, talks about these financial bubbles as massive processes of credit creation that often accompany major technological revolutions. She makes the point that when a truly revolutionary technology emerges, it finds an environment that is inevitably unfavorable and even hostile.
Because it disrupts the status quo.
Exactly. It challenges existing industries, existing power structures, existing ways of doing things. There's inherent resistance. This pushback suggests that aiming for a truly risk-minimizing path might be wishful thinking when you're trying to introduce something fundamentally new. You're often fighting uphill battles. So the market itself can introduce huge risks, even distortions. It makes me think of what Howard Marks calls the perversity of risk.
That's a perfect connection. Howard Marks, in The Most Important Thing Illuminated, talks about exactly that. He says, when investors feel risk is high, their actions serve to reduce risk. But when investors believe risk is low, they create dangerous conditions.
So perceived safety can actually create risk.
Precisely. In these apparently wide-open, uncontested blue oceans, you might feel safe because there's no direct competition yet. But that very feeling can blind you to the underlying dangers, the fragility of a market with no proven demand, unpredictable costs, maybe scalability issues you haven't hit yet. It breeds overconfidence, unchecked speculation, which is the polar opposite of minimizing risk. The bluer the ocean seems, the more careful you probably need to be.
And we've seen that false sense of security lead to disaster, haven't we? Like the whole subprime mortgage crisis documented in The Big Short. An entire market built on complex new products, the CDOs, just couldn't face the reality of the risks.
Right. They found it could not afford to change its mind, even when the warning signs were flashing red. The system kept going until it imploded. It shows how systemic risk can build up in new, complex markets or financial products where the dynamics aren't fully understood. It's a scary example of collective delusion overriding clear evidence, far from risk minimizing. And even for established giants, venturing into new territory is risky. Look at GM's history, recounted by Alfred P. Sloan Jr. in My Years with General Motors. He talks very candidly about GM buying the Samson Sieve Grip Tractor Company. Turned out to be a very unprofitable venture, drained resources, couldn't find a market.
Contrasted
Contrasted with their later success with Frigidaire, which tapped into the booming new market for home refrigeration, a clear, growing demand. The Samson tractor failure shows that even huge companies with deep pockets face a high failure rate when they try to create or enter entirely new business areas. Hitting a blue ocean is far from guaranteed.
Okay, so the path seems much rockier, much less certain, and definitely not risk-free. This brings us back to those celebrated success stories. Cirque du Soleil, Southwest, Yellowtail Wine, the ones often held up as proof of the blue ocean strategy. How much of their success was really down to following this specific replicable process? And how much was maybe just, unique circumstances, brilliant timing, or extraordinary, maybe even unrepeatable leadership?
That's where we need to be really careful about generalizing. Paul Krugman warned about this in A Country is Not a Company Taking Success in One Specific Business Context and Trying to Apply It as a Universal Formula. A brilliant insight by one founder or a leader who just has an incredible gut feel for navigating uncertainty. That's not the same thing as a systematic process anyone can follow.
Right. Sometimes the framework gets applied after the fact to explain the success, doesn't it?
Often, yes, it becomes a retrospective rationalization. The what they achieved might look like a neat blue ocean shift in hindsight, but the how they got there was likely far messier, more intuitive, maybe even accidental in parts.
Yeah. So if you're listening, think about Cirque du Soleil again. Amazing success, right? Often cited as creating this new space between circus and theater. But how much of that was the sheer artistic vision, the relentless drive, the force of personality of its founders, Guy Liberté and Jules Stacquois, versus them sitting down with a strategy canvas and systematically eliminating, reducing, raising, creating? It often feels like the magic was in the people and their unique creative spark, not just the framework. The framework helps us understand it, maybe, but could it have created it? That's the question.
And even if a company does find and successfully navigate a blue ocean, we have to remember what Scott Galloway points out in The Four. Eventually, the mortality rate is 100%, even for the biggest companies. The very processes put in place to scale that blue ocean success can, over time, slow the firm down. Managers start sticking to the rules, playing politics, rather than making bold, adaptive decisions.
So the blue ocean inevitably starts to turn red again.
Or the company develops internal sclerosis. The point is, there's no permanent safety. Even a successful blue ocean faces new threats eventually, from competitors finally catching up, from changing tastes, or from its own internal rigidity. The game never really ends.
Beyond the canvas, what true strategic innovation requires.
Okay, so if blue oceans aren't always systematic, definitely not risk-free and not permanent, what does it take? What skills, what approaches are truly crucial for genuine strategic innovation, for navigating these turbulent waters and actually creating something new?
Well, it really comes down to something called strategic flexibility.
Hmm.
Thinkers like Gary Hamel and C.K. Pollard talked a lot about this. They observed that managers often get stuck in their mental models, right? They keep reusing old solutions, old playbooks. And this makes them fail to notice, mistakenly define, or poorly evaluate new trends, products, services, technologies, and even competitors. They miss the signals.
Because they're looking through the old lens?
Exactly. So true innovation requires adaptive routines. This means building organizational capabilities for continuous learning, for reconfiguring resources quickly and critically, for constantly challenging your own assumptions and sacred cows. It's about being nimble, agile, able to pivot fast, not just rigidly sticking to a 5-year plan that might already be irrelevant. It means building a culture where it's okay to experiment and where failure is seen as learning. And that flexibility has to be reflected in how resources are actually allocated. Clayton Christensen made a really profound point in How Will You Measure Your Life. He said a strategy, whether in companies or in life, is created through hundreds of everyday decisions about how you spend your time, energy, and money.
So strategy isn't the plan on paper, it's where the resources actually flow.
Precisely. It's a sum total of your actions, not just your intentions. It's about consistent, intentional choices. Think about Steve Jobs returning to Apple in 1997. The company was a mess, bleeding money, totally unfocused. Jobs didn't just give inspiring speeches. He immediately set to work fixing the underlying resource allocation problem.
He famously simplified the product line, right?
Dramatically. He slashed products ruthlessly. He focused the entire company on just a few key things, like the iMac. He made sure every dollar, every engineer, every bit of marketing was laser-focused on making the best products with a great user experience. Anything else was cut. People who weren't on board were out.
That takes serious conviction.
Absolutely. It shows how intentional, often tough resource allocation, driven by a clear vision and relentless execution, is what really drives strategic success. Much more than just a framework on its own. It was about making hard choices and sticking to them.
That's a great example. It really underscores that idea. A strategy is nothing but good intentions unless it's effectively implemented. The plan matters, but the actual building, especially on new ground, requires those constant, deliberate choices about where you put your effort and money, and the guts to see it through. So given all this uncertainty and the need for execution, visionary leadership seems absolutely essential. What does that look like in practice when you're trying to create new markets? What are the hallmarks beyond just using the tools?
Well, beyond the frameworks, it comes down so much to people, to human dynamics, and sometimes just sheer determination. Peter Drucker, in The Effective Executive, stressed that good leaders make the strengths of the boss productive, leveraging their team's talents. And Gabaro and Cotter, in Managing Your Boss, talked about establishing unambiguous mutual expectations.
So clarity and trust are key.
Absolutely. That kind of environment allows people to take risks, to contribute their best work, especially when things are uncertain. It builds the foundation for innovation. It's about trust and clear communication in the midst of potential chaos. But sometimes it's more than just good management. It's about an individual's almost obsessive drive. Take the story of Louis Ranieri from Michael Lewis's Liar's Poker. Ranieri was basically banished to Salomon Brothers' mortgage bond desk, seen as total backwater stuff, exiled to Siberia. Nobody wanted to touch mortgages back then.
Right, not glamorous Wall Street trading.
Not at all. But it was Ranieri who had, as Lewis put it, the mentality and the will to create a market. He just relentlessly pushed to standardize mortgages, to securitize them, to make them tradable like other bonds. He was fundamentally changing the way Americans borrowed money to buy their homes.
Against huge resistance, presumably.
Immense resistance from his own firm, from regulators, huge legal hurdles. It was his dreamer quality, his sheer persistence that bulldozed through it all. That wasn't some systematic process you could teach. It was a personal crusade. It was individual will carving out a massive new financial market.
Wow, that really highlights how sometimes it's not a generic process, but that singular will to create.
Yeah.
That individual belief and just pushing and pushing, even when everyone says no, it's about courage as much as a canvas.
Exactly. And even if you succeed, even if you have that will and create that new space, the notion that it stays blue forever, that's just not realistic. It's a temporary advantage at best.
That's such a critical point, like maybe easy to forget in the excitement of creating something new. Blue Ocean's strategy aims to make competition irrelevant, but does any market really stay uncontested indefinitely? Is that just an illusion?
It's definitely an illusion, a tempting one, but still an illusion. Michael Porter's work in competitive strategy is still so relevant here. He constantly emphasized analyzing the competitive forces.
Yeah.
New entrants, buyer power, supplier power, substitutes, existing rivals.
The five forces.
Those forces are always acting. Even in a brand new blue ocean, success will eventually attract attention. Competitors will emerge, imitators will show up, maybe substitutes you never considered. Understanding those dynamics, anticipating how the competitive landscape will inevitably evolve, is crucial. No market stays uncontested forever. The blue will eventually get tinged with red. You have to keep innovating, keep adapting. And this ties back to Theodore Levitt's classic idea of marketing myopia. Companies can get so focused on the specific product they make or the specific blue ocean they think they created that they become blinded. They fail to see the larger purpose or true market dynamics. They miss the real job customers are hiring them to do.
So they define their market too narrowly.
Exactly. That online education platform pioneer we mentioned, if they think they're just in the online course business, they might miss the threat from AI tutors or VR training because they fail to see they're actually in the broader learning solutions market. You might feel safe in your little blue patch, but if you're not constantly scanning the horizon for new technologies, changing needs, different business models, you'll get blindsided. The next wave of red can come from anywhere.
Right.
Outro.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive, it's really clear that Blue Ocean Strategy offers this incredibly inspiring vision and some genuinely valuable tools like the strategy canvas. No doubt about that. It rightly pushes us to think beyond just beating the competition, to imagine creating new value, new demand. That's powerful. It's a fantastic call to innovate, to think bigger, more creatively. Its ability to shift perspective is undeniable.
Absolutely. But as we've explored today, the actual journey to those blue oceans, well, it's rarely as smooth or as systematic or nearly as risk-free as a simple formula might imply.
Yeah.
It's usually marked by profound uncertainty, by the absolute necessity of learning as you go, adapting constantly, and by facing the immense risks of trying to build something where nothing existed before.
Yeah, the reality is often messier.
Much messier. True breakthroughs often seem to come from those unique creative sparks, from sheer individual will, from visionary leaders who navigate the unknown, rather than just executing a perfect, pre-planned blueprint. And the market never stands still. Even the bluest waters eventually attract attention, demanding resilience and constant evolution. So maybe a final provocative thought to leave you with comes from Howard Marks again in The Most Important Thing Illuminated. He said, because ensuring the ability to survive under adverse circumstances is incompatible with maximizing returns in the good times, investors must choose between the two.
That really makes you think. So when you dream of your own blue ocean, consider this. How much risk are you genuinely prepared to take on? Are you building your strategy not just find those new waters, but with the resilience to survive when things inevitably get choppy, when that blue starts looking a lot more red? What's your balance personally or for your organization between that bold ambition and the need for resilience? What are you willing to bet for greatness, and what foundations are you building to withstand the storms? Something to ponder. We'll leave it there for this deep dive.